A second round of tax cuts may be on the horizon. President Trump today met with GOP lawmakers to discuss tax reform 2.0. Among them, the architect of the GOP's first tax plan, Texas Congressman Kevin Brady, who had this to say.
We're here to talk to you about making permanent this tax relief. One, so they can continue to grow. Two, so we can add 1.5 million new jobs. And three, we can protect them against a future Washington trying to steal back those hard-earned dollars that you in Republican Congress has given them.
I love tax cuts. Now, besides expanding and making the individual tax cuts permanent, Republicans are also looking to make it easier for small companies to offer 401k plans. Yes. Congressman Brady said he wants the House to vote on all of this by September, just in time for the midterms. So can Republicans get it done again? The party panel is here to discuss. Attorney and Democratic strategist Danielle McLaughlin is here, along with Fox News contributor and Washington Times opinion editor Charlie Hurt. And she's not hurting at all. She is the correspondent for The Greg Gutfeld Show. Kat Timpf is at the Plexiglass Oval. Welcome, everyone.
Yay. Yay. Good to be here.
Charles, I'm going to start with you because I have a feeling at this table you are the most excited and optimistic about these tax cuts. That was arguably the biggest win for congressional Republicans. So if they do this, the perception that I will have more money will make voters happy and it'll make them spend more and could boost the economy between now and November. What say you?
Especially since they have to run on the economy because the economy is actually doing very well. And it is a good thing. But, you know, I keep coming back to the same thing. You know, tax cuts are great, and I do love them. I want all the tax cuts that you can possibly come.
Taxation is theft. Hashtag taxation is theft.
Oh, and also, money going to the government is a bad thing. It's not that we just need to find other revenues.
No, government has plenty of revenues.
Too much revenues. The problem is they're not cutting any spending.
That's right. And
that's what drives me nuts.
And I want you to bring that home, Kat Timpf, because we want more of our money. We don't just want more of our money back from the government. We want them to stop stealing it in the first place on all of these redundant programs that even though there are too many programs doing the exact same thing, they don't do them very well.
Right. Speaking of not doing things very well, I think Republicans, man, you know, a great day to come out and talk about this tax plan. It's not like there's any other news that's distracting away from it that people are talking about today.
It's so funny that you bring that up because people just assume that every single thing that comes out of Washington, D.C. is some form of political posturing.
Yeah, absolutely. But
there's no genuine adventure anymore. It's really just I'm doing this to screw you or to help my side.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that there is a political advantage, obviously, to tax cuts, as you both said, that they have to run in the economy. And I think I would love to see a tax cut. I would love to see less of my own hard-earned money stolen from me for stupid ideas like universal basic income and what other kind of garbage they're coming out with on the left these days.
We'll talk about that
absolutely.
in the next segment.
But we do need to actually cut spending too, and that's not popular, and that's why no one wants to do it. But money is like a real thing, and you actually need to have it. You can't just have these huge deficits forever and ever, and tax cuts can make deficits worse.
Yeah, we spent $729 billion last year on the social safety net, and I don't know that we have a lot to show for it. So how are we going to cut spending?
That's a great question. I mean, the first round of tax cuts, I think it cost us about $1.5 trillion. And do people vote on it? I don't know. I think they're going to want to see more money in their wallet. But I think particularly younger voters, millennials, are going to say, hang on, that big hole in that budget that you just blew, I'm going to be paying for that and my kids are going to be paying for that. And that's a real problem.
Yes,
that's really a problem, especially for younger voters. I think politically it's interesting. The 401k piece is great. It's bipartisan. Praise.
And small businesses are the backbone of this economy, so let people save. Social Security won't be there. Medicaid is going to go bust. Allow people to put some of their own money away in 401k so they have something at the end of their career.
Here's the thing that terrifies me about whenever politicians get to monkeying around with 401ks, they're going to figure out some way to tax it.
Yeah.
They're going to figure it out.
And steal with their gooey little hands that are covered in Marmite and emu feathers.
Yes,
and it will become a bipartisan issue.
Yeah, stealing money from voters is a bipartisan issue.
Right.
That's what sucks. But still, cut taxes, cut spending, let the economy grow. The panel has grown in your heart, and we've got more with them after the break. Thank goodness. Former President Barack Obama returns to the stage, this time to explain why capitalism you know, the very system that made him rich, is somehow bad for the rest of us. I will explain in my monologue next. President Obama never mentioned our current president by name, but he did rail against strongman politics and public officials who just make stuff up. He also talked about the need for a, quote, inclusive market-based system in the 21st century, whatever that is. So, is President Obama missing the spotlight these days? The party panel is back. Kat Timpf, Charlie Hurt, and Danielle McLaughlin. Kat, I will start with you. Leftism is rooted in campaign slogans which sound great in theory, but when they're practically applied, their ultimate end is either North Korea or Venezuela.
Absolutely. I don't know how anyone could look at the end result of socialism and all the many examples of that going so badly and say, I want to try that here. But now we have a Democratic Party where so many people are openly saying they're socialists or they're democratic socialists. And it's so ironic when you hear it coming from someone like Obama when he has made so much money. And I know he also said during those remarks that his favorite thing about making so much money is that he can give back, which just like, come on, man.
Then just give back.
Then just give it all away. Give it all away. You don't have to go on your fancy vacations and do whatever else you do. Or at least admit it. Admit you like having cash. I'd respect it.
Like being Jay-Z and Beyonce. I want to be Jay-Z and Beyonce. There's nothing wrong with that. It's fantastic. I mean, that is a valid aim. But stop shaming everybody else. And by the way, capitalism is not immoral. It is not unethical. And that is why there are people on this earth who have rising literacy rates and dropping microbes.
Yeah, no, it's the opposite of unethical. And, but I mean, when you think of the atrocities that have been committed in the name of socialism, in the name of communism, it's just staggering. And could you imagine this guy, Obama? Right, remember his 2008 campaign? It was so hopeful and unifying, and it was an amazing campaign. Could you imagine him peddling this crap during that campaign?
No,
he would have never
lost it.
Right,
yeah.
He would, and he would never would have gotten past the primary. He wouldn't have lost.
He also lied to the American public, saying that Americans were not being spied on, and he ran as a civil libertarian in 2008. I mean, that is one of the most hypocritical 180 shifts that we've seen in modern politics. Danielle, I want to get you in here because I know you're a fan of the president, and a lot of people are for various reasons, but there's something about the heart of this message that never really delivers.
Sure, and I think to the point about him saying these very, very progressive things on a world stage after the presidency makes sense because campaigning on that in 2008 wouldn't have made any sense for him politically.
I knew it the whole time.
But I will say, as probably the resident communist here, I do think that UBI should be tested. We have a welfare system anyway, right? We have food stamps, we have all sorts of things that are available to low-income Americans. This would be far, as a libertarian, far more resource, I guess, better in terms of using resources for the government. It's just
okay, so let me ask you this.
It's just a check.
You know, it's not just a check because someone has to write that check and someone has to pay for it. That's the problem with it. It would be great if we all had free health care. It would be great if we could spend $3 trillion a year on health care. We simply can't afford that. So if you're saying that we can give up Medicaid and food stamps and long-term disability and all this other stuff, which cost, when you take that $729 billion and break it down, it's about $16,000 per person per year.
That's a huge amount of money.
If you're saying that you could get away with $6,000 in UBI, and that would be it, that's the ceiling, no more Medicaid, is that the trade you're willing to make?
It absolutely is. I think that whether it's $500 a month or $1,000 a month, use the resources that are otherwise available and channel it into, I think there's a real dignity.
So you would be willing to get rid of Medicaid and write everyone a check for $1,000.
I mean, there's a pilot program in Chicago, which is like 1,000 families. We need to see if it works.
But you're also going to have that in addition to the pension problems they've got in Chicago and Illinois as a whole, in addition to the federal programs that people are already tapping into. So that doesn't take care of a number of issues that they're facing locally. And
I think a pilot makes sense. I'm not, without any data, we can sit around and we're just sort of we're posturing. But I think
but that money has to, the data is that we don't have enough money. We already have a huge deficit. And also, like, if you can work, you can get an income that way.
Yeah. Well, or you could just move to Portland, Oregon.
Radical idea.
My hometown of Portland, Oregon is a cesspool. That's according to the city's police union president, who says Mayor Ted Wheeler's policies on the homeless have turned the Rose City into a dump. In a Facebook post, Officer Daryl Turner writes, livability that once made Portland a unique and vibrant city is now replaced with human feces and businesses at doorways, in our parks and on our streets. Aggressive panhandlers block the sidewalks, storefronts, and landmarks like Pioneer Square, discouraging people from enjoying our city. He continues, Mayor Wheeler's public policies have failed. Record tax revenues are being brought into the city, yet what do we have to show for it? They need to put forth actual solutions with actual results and stop throwing hard-earned taxpayer money down a black hole. But Portland is alone. Other West Coast liberal elite havens like Seattle and San Francisco have major homeless problems. So does Officer Turner have a point? No one has really figured out how to tackle the homeless crisis that is plaguing the West Coast, and it does compromise quality of life. It sucks. It sucks to be homeless. It also sucks to have to wade through tent cities. And, you know, in some areas, homeless people are aggressive. In others, it's moms with kids, and it's absolutely heartbreaking. So what can you, in fact, do?
I think that it can't be understated just how much the drug war has to do with people living on the street and homeless crisis and all of that sort of thing. Because if someone goes to prison for a drug-related offense and then they come out with something like that on their record, not only have they not been working for however long they've been in prison, they have that on their record, and it can make it much more difficult for them to get a job.
If you've got a choice between someone with a college degree and someone who just spent 4 years in prison, who are you going to hire?
Absolutely, and then it makes it impossible for them to sort of dig themselves out of that kind of
because they know how to make fun, homemade, cheap wine. Charlie?
And this is the great thing about federalism is that Portland can try all of these things and fail, and people living elsewhere don't have to deal with it. The problem is we don't learn from these mistakes. We don't learn from the mistakes in San Francisco and places like that. But going back to the thing that you were talking about earlier, which is related to this, it's a good point about would you just get rid of Medicare, get rid of everything, and then just cut a blank check to some people? And the libertarian response would be like, well, it's better than what we're doing now.
Yeah, right.
But the problem, and this is the problem that doesn't get discussed about enough, I don't think, is any kind of largesse like this that you're bestowing on somebody, any kind of charity, it's a grave responsibility. I wouldn't just like give my children a bunch of money.
And if it backfires, you have to admit it. And that's what these mayors don't do. They just want to throw more money and never really tackle the problem.
No, I understand. And, you know, I mean, New York City, I think there's 60,000 people who are in homeless shelters every night. This is a tragedy in many ways.
Some of them are in 4-star hotels, actually.
Yeah, there's a lot of people in hotels.
The city spends up to $600 a night housing the homeless in Times Square.
You did?
Yeah.
How did it go for you?
Didn't work out.
No, I think it was the tie. I'm
Might
just
have
saying. I'm just like, it's a gift.
Yeah.
No, they don't have that. They don't have that button on Priceline.
I was
do they?
wearing a top.
Last word. We have 10 seconds.
This is a serious problem. This is about drugs. This is about rents. I don't know. I think that Oregon needs to.
You are right. No, it's when you have rent control and rent stabilization.
That was a big driver in Portland.
The problem.
People were just out of their homes.
Danielle, Charlie, and Kat, a glorious night with brilliant people. Coming up, former FBI lawyer and infamous text messenger Kate sat down with lawmakers. Did she sell out her former lover, Peter Strzok? David Bruno here to explain the ramifications and what it means for the Mueller investigation. He is next.